Lee, we were going to be joined earlier by Andrei Telezhenko, but unfortunately, Andrei had something that had to reschedule. How you doing today?
I'm doing very well. How are you, Jason?
I'm great, and we're going to talk about Andrei. He's an important guy. We'll have him back on as soon as he's ready for that. But he was the Ukrainian embassy in Washington, D.C. whistleblower. And you are the one, Lee, who brought him to everybody's attention. Why don't you give everybody a little bit of background, or where is it that you want to start with talking about today's topics?
Well, but I think the best way to start talking about Andre is to play the chapter from my book that you have, but not now, okay? But you're ready to go with that, right?
Yes, I am. And I should remind people that if they want to read your book, they can go to patreon.com/Stranahan, sponsor Lee on Patreon, and tell everybody what they're going to get access to with the sponsorship on Patreon and the book, Lee.
Okay, did you hear about my new idea for the endless book?
I did not hear about that.
Okay, so this is Jason, you're my friend. I should have
Absolutely.
done that a long time ago, right?
Yes. You did think of that a long time ago.
What's that?
Yeah, you did. Or you should have. I didn't hear exactly what you said, but it's essentially blogging, isn't it? The book that never ends?
No, it's not exactly that. Here's the thing. The stories I cover, like Ukraine, like Russiagate, like Pickford, the Black Farmer scandal, are complex. Would you agree?
100%. I think that's what you're known for.
And so if someone said, well, what's Lee think about Ukraine? There's no one place to go right now. In other words, there's interviews I've done, there's podcasts we've done, there's, articles I've written, there's tweets. Makes sense? It's all over the
Yeah, it's
place.
all over. Right, exactly.
And so I should have done a book in theory, but here's a problem I always have. First off, a book is in theory, it's a fixed format. Okay, like you write a book, then say it's done, right? But these stories don't end. You see
Right.
what I'm saying? I
Yeah,
mean,
no, I agree.
and that's one problem I've been having. Another problem is uh, thinking about what you charge for a book. Now, I think times have changed, Jason. Have you heard of this internet thing?
Yeah, I think it's going to stick.
Yeah, I think it's caught on. So it's really changed. Like it used to be like 30 years ago, you write a book, finish it, sell it to a publisher, right?
If
And
you
then
could.
publisher maybe gives you an advance, and then maybe it goes in bookstores, right? I mean, that was,
Maybe. Yeah.
I think,
You got to
30
get the
years ago.
publisher. That's the tough part, right? You never know. That's the kind of the wall to it.
But actually, what does a publisher do uh, that
Print
I
them.
can't do on my own today?
Right. Right.
Nothing, essentially. And with Kindle Direct Publishing, I can even do a paperback book. Make sense?
Hmm.
So, and the way books have worked in the past with anybody is like the author hides his work, works in secret, and then has a finished thing and puts it out, right? So, like,
Yes.
if it's a nonfiction book, they work in their book. Why don't they show everybody?
It
It's,
gives
it's
it away.
right. In theory, it gives it away. But like, take this Ukraine book. I've been working on this for months. And really, in a sense, I've been working on it for years, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
research and stuff. So the problem is, would people like to read the stuff I've written already? I figured they would. Now, it's, but it's not done. But I got 50,000 words, but that's a bit. That's a lot. That's a chunk. So what I've thought of is a endless book. That's almost like it's a book narrative, and you can download the latest version if you're a member of my Patreon. Not a paid member, any member. Because what I'm trying to do is encourage people to be part of that community. Makes
Hmm.
sense?
Sure.
And what is a book worth?
I don't know. Depends on the book.
And also depends on the person.
Right.
Like, like if you have the best, uh, like book on cooking pork ribs. What's it worth to Yakov Shapiro?
Maybe not much. Yeah, he's not going
You
to
see,
cook too many pork ribs. Right.
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So now to me, it might be worth a lot because I love that. But everybody brings their own knowledge and interest and what they want to invest in a book. And also, I don't know if you've noticed this. If you notice the economy is kind of bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't want, let's say someone's really wants to learn what I talk about with Ukraine. And let's say they lost their job like I did a few months ago. I don't want them not having money to stop them from reading. Does it
Right.
make sense?
Yeah.
And what I found is a lot of times my work is worth more than, like, I might charge $20 for a book. I might say, go, that sounds right. Because how do you price it really?
I don't know.
Is it is 5, 20? I don't know. Right? Do you see what I'm saying?
25. Yeah. No, it's all over the place. I also want to interject, Lee, if I might, because a lot of people are seeing you maybe for the first time or not for a long time. And then we always get stupid comments. Oh, the guest is drunk. Lee is recovering from several strokes. So I think the book is also a good format for you now because you have all this knowledge and maybe it's more difficult for you to speak as quickly as you once did and stuff like that. Is that right?
Well, that's right. I would say I don't know if recovering is right. Like I've told you, I think this is my voice. I think this is as good as you're gonna get. I
It's
really
got good
do.
days and less good days, I would say. And sometimes I'm amazed at how good the recovery is. I just want people who are seeing you to understand that we're not sitting here having drinks and cocktails and talking about Ukraine. There's a thing going on. And it's, we were going to have Andre with us. And Andre is the Washington, D.C. embassy whistleblower. Do you want to play this chapter, or didn't we want to give you a little
Yeah,
background on what's going on there?
one more thing before we set this up, before we play it. So this chapter is part of my book on Ukraine, which right now anyone can download the first 50,000 words on just join my Patreon. Nothing to buy. It's absolutely free. But if you like it, donate what you want. Because you know what I'm saying, Jason? Sometimes, like, people play a scratcher card or something, and they
Hmm.
get some money in they did not expect, and they might feel like, I like that guy who's drunk. Yeah. But you see what I'm saying?
This is a real narrow demo. The scratcher card winners who are going to subscribe to patreon.com/Stranahan. But I like the targeted marketing, Lee. It's good. It's
So I really try to rethink what a book is. In 2024, I think a book is whatever you want to pay for it. And the other thing I did last week is, you see the telethon marathon I did last weekend?
uh, I did not see that. I've been very busy with legal stuff, that Mayor Adams has been indicted. It has direct impact
Yeah.
on my lawsuit against the city.
So last week I was really going to get evicted. I was at the end of my month and I was really worried. And a couple of clients I'd been hoping would come through didn't come through. So I'm really like $1,000 short of rent, or like more than that, 1,400. And the sheriff was gonna come Monday,
Oh my
okay?
God, Lee.
So what, I'm not complaining. What I did was I worked. I decided to do a telethon marathon where I
Okay.
got on every hour and talked about news. Now, I did, see, the thing about my voice, Jason,
Hmm.
uh, doing a long thing is tough for me. The main thing is it gets me tired. It's
Hmm.
exhausting to talk. So it's
Hmm.
more of an effort. Like, if I need to enunciate more clearly, I can make that happen. It's just more work. But doing short videos, like 2 to 5 minute videos every hour, worked out great. The first night I did, I think, 21 hours. I kept going for 21 hours
Wow. Holy cow.
and then I passed out. So,
Jeez.
and then I got
This
up
is
and got
cool.
right back. What's that?
Little AI imaging there.
Yeah. And so I'm doing another marathon this weekend. This weekend is going to be the Ukraine marathon. very focused marathon. And this book is a good companion piece to marathon. This is actually the start of it, this extra long video. But starting at 6 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to start doing a video an hour, like a short one. The other nice thing about short videos, Jason, if someone misses like 5 of them, let's say they have a life, which I assume some people do. Let's say they were watching my marathon and they go away for like 5 hours, right? Normally they'll be like, oh God. But at only 2 to 5 minutes of video, it's like maybe 15 minutes. See what I'm saying? They can
Sure.
watch all 5. It's like chocolates.
Eat the whole box.
Right. And so people can catch up and stuff like that. So we'll be doing a lot of stuff in Ukraine. And the book is going to be a companion piece to that. So I want to play a chapter that I did through AI narration. This is the first chapter. Now, Jason, I got to point out this chapter is not true, but it's true. It's a dramatization of a real incident. And next week, when we talk to Andre, he'll tell us exactly what's true. Do you see what I'm saying? It's an incident that's a real incident, but obviously I wasn't in the room.
Right. A dramatic recreation of an incident based on testimony from some of the involved parties.
But the part that I start with, having Biden be pissed at Poroshenko and throwing the magazine down, that's all real. That's, often in movies, have you ever had this experience where you watch a movie and you go, I know this is a true story, but I know this all isn't true. And then you find out the most bizarre parts in the movie are the part that was true.
I don't know about that, but I saw that Dick Cheney movie and they had all kinds of... Did you see that movie where I guess Christian Bale plays Dick Cheney? It was a pretty good movie, actually. It's called I think, is it just called Dick? It should have been called Dick. I think it's called Veep, but it's about Dick Cheney.
Yeah, Dick is a better title. But this scene, the most bizarre stuff is probably true. So as you're listening to this, you might think, well, that's absurd, but it's true, most likely. So let's play chapter 1 of the book on Ukraine. This sets up a lot of subjects, and you'll see. We talk about, that's why it says first chapter. It's dramatic, I think. It's but also it gets us into a lot of topics. So let's play chapter 1, Jason.
Chapter 1. Ukraine, January 2017. Joe Biden was pissed. Beyond pissed, he was furious. He threw the article down on the desk of the Ukrainian president. His voice, a low growl, commanded, "Look at this, Poroshenko." The article's headline screamed, "Ukrainian efforts to sabotage Trump campaign backfire." And it had come out just a couple of weeks before Trump was due to be inaugurated. It was surreal. Petro Poroshenko, the chocolate king with his billion-dollar confectionery empire, looked like a beaten mutt, waiting for the next blow. Poroshenko, a large and imposing figure, often cut a striking image in Donbass. He would stride through battlefields in his military uniform, commanding respect and fear. Under his orders, towns like Luhansk and Donetsk were bombed, leaving destruction in their wake. The smell of burning buildings choked the air. Streets were strewn with debris and shattered glass. The cries of the wounded mixed with the distant boom of artillery. Homes were reduced to rubble, and the stench of death was everywhere. People were dragged from their homes, beaten, and tortured. Makeshift trials ended in summary executions, bodies left as grim reminders of the brutality. In Donbass, the Chocolate King had done as he was ordered by his CIA superiors. He followed commands without question, enforcing their strategies with ruthless efficiency. The reasons why a man like him would take orders from the CIA were buried deep, but the signs were clear. Poroshenko's actions on the ground were the hand of the unseen power that pulled the strings from afar. Now, in this office, all that wartime bravado had vanished. His head was down, eyes flicking upward to meet Biden's glare. The confidence he wore in the field was replaced by an uneasy submission, like an employee being reprimanded by a boss. He looked almost servile, waiting for the next command. Biden grabbed the article again, pointing at it with a snarl. Do you know who this asshole is? He jabbed his finger at Andriy Telizhenko's name in the article, his voice filled with barely contained rage. Poroshenko stammered. I know him. He's a diplomat in Washington, D.C. Biden snapped back. You see what he's done? You understand? He's exposed so much. Do you know what trouble this is going to cause us? We just lost the election. This is my last trip to Kyiv. Biden thought back to his first trip to Ukraine as Veep in July 2009. Yushchenko was president then, the first of three he'd deal with as vice president. The warm reception, the optimism in Yushchenko's eyes. They'd talked about Ukraine's future, the early days of the Obama administration's reset with Russia. He remembered standing beside Yushchenko, delivering a speech. All those words about cooperation, a fresh start. But in his head, Biden knew better. It was mostly bullshit. Strategic moves dressed up as diplomacy. Treaties like New START, logistical support for Afghanistan. These were to secure American interests, not about genuine partnership. 6 months later, Yushchenko named Stepan Bandera a hero of Ukraine. Russia was furious, but fuck them. The tough guys in Ukraine worshipped Bandera, and that's who the boys in Langley backed. Now, as he glared at Poroshenko, Biden couldn't help but think. Different players, same games, same power struggles. But he'd been dealing with Ukrainians since the 1980s. He knew how to handle Ukrainians. Most of them anyway. Biden looked at Poroshenko and said, What do you plan to do about Andriy Telizhenko? Poroshenko stammered, I'll call him. I'll call him right away. Biden's mind raced back to the name Telizhenko. He remembered Telizhenko had been in the White House, a diplomat with connections. Victoria Nuland had mentioned him to Biden once. She had told him about Telizhenko's clever move during the Maidan protests. Nuland wanted to give out bread, but Telizhenko pointed out how bad that would look. Cookies, he suggested, seemed like a much better move. Biden thought about how Telizhenko understood the cultural nuances. Offering bread could be seen as condescending or reminiscent of handouts in dire times. Cookies, on the other hand, carried a different connotation, something more thoughtful, less harsh. It even made Tory Nuland seem warm. The boys in Langley loved that. This small, seemingly trivial detail had made an impression, showing Telizhenko's sensitivity to perception. But now, as Biden looked at the article on the desk, he saw that Telizhenko was not what they had assumed. This article showed he wasn't their kind of person after all. He was someone different, someone infected with ethics, someone willing to speak out. Biden squinted again at the article and felt a vein pulsing in his forehead. He breathed out and calmed himself down. He had work to do. Couldn't let this be a distraction. Tempest in a teapot. He'd learned one thing over the decades. People in the United States don't pay any attention to Ukraine. The story could be the most sensational thing in the world. People will not pay any attention. He'd learned that all you had to do was mention a few catchphrases. Democracy, democracy, democracy. Anti-corruption, freedom fighters, Russian aggression, Putin, Putin, Putin. People will forget all of it. People's apathy. That's how it works. Still, though, they'd worked so hard on this operation. Still stunning to him that Hillary had lost. It was going to make their work for the next 4 years harder. Not impossible. So much accomplished during Obama's term. Overthrow of anti-Bandera Yanukovych. New government, completely controlled by them. No one was going to care about this stuff in the article. It could be buried easily. Apathetic people. And after all, this is a country that, after 25 years of Soros talking about fighting corruption, this shithole was still one of the most corrupt countries in the world, and the poorest in Europe. Apathy was the constant. When the vice president's son, Hunter, and the Secretary of State's son, Devin, are set up with million-a-year jobs on the board of Burisma, no one cares. No one ties that to corruption. The big guy still has the brand. Everything's fine. He just hoped Hunter didn't get in the shower with the wrong 15-year-old over here, one who had a brother, who was one of those frowning fuckers from Lviv who wanted to defend his sister's honor and keep her blood pure. Even the brand wouldn't help Hunt then. Americans don't care about Ukraine. Press was in his pocket. Kind of shocking this article had been published in Politico. Maybe Vogel needed a new job. Maybe he'd like a gig with New York Times. Biden looked at Poroshenko, cocking an eyebrow. This Telizhenko, you think he's with the Russians? For real? Poroshenko shook his head firmly. Not possible, he replied, his voice steady and confident. You remember Automaidan, those boys in their cars, always moving, always fighting. Andriy was one of them. Biden's brow furrowed slightly. Andriy was there when it was most dangerous, Poroshenko continued. He saw friends die. One of them died in his arms, brain blown out. He stayed even then, helping others. Biden looked at Poroshenko, asking quietly, one of our snipers or... His voice trailed off. Poroshenko shrugged. There's one detail, though, you might be interested in, he said, his voice now tinged with nervousness. Biden looked up. Oh? Poroshenko nodded. Yes, he worked with Shokin. Biden let out a whistle. Well, son of a bitch. Yes, Poroshenko continued. Telizhenko was part of the Burisma investigation. Biden exhaled, thinking, calming himself down. Well, our people are still in place in Washington. From Langley to Arlington to Foggy Bottom, Trump or no Trump, our people are in place. And of course, Poroshenko's days were numbered. He wouldn't make it past the next election. He was already very unpopular with the Ukrainian people. Biden thought to himself, when you're that unpopular, you can't last. A lot of it was due to events right after Maidan. He remembered hearing about the economic crisis that struck Kiev. People were freezing in their apartments, pipes bursting from the cold, residents boiling water just to stay warm. It was chaos, and Poroshenko was blamed for much of it. Biden thought to himself, everything's going to be okay. There's so much they don't know. The vast expanse of hidden truths, how little the American people knew about the extent of U.S. involvement in Ukraine. They had no idea how long the CIA had been there, or how the Democrats had been working with the CIA for years. A lot of them may not like Soros, but they didn't know about him being recruited by the CIA in the early 90s, about the chemical weapons labs, or the deliberate toll taken on Russia in the 90s, causing countless deaths. Sure, many knew about Operation Paperclip and how the U.S. had brought over German Nazi scientists after World War II. But what they didn't know was that the U.S. had continued to back Nazi collaborators, racist, brutal ones who had killed tens of thousands in the most horrific ways, for decades. When they did hear about it, they would be in denial. Biden leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. He thought about how one revelation led to another, each more shocking than the last. Discovering corruption at the highest levels was one thing. People could accept that. They could even handle the idea of their government making morally dubious decisions in the name of national security. But this was a bridge too far. Finding out that the U.S. had been backing Nazis, not just in some distant foggy past, but actively supporting racist, brutal collaborators for decades, this was something most Americans couldn't fathom. It was a truth so dark, so deeply entrenched in the fabric of history, that it threatened to unravel their fundamental beliefs about their country. They knew what Hitler had said about the big lie. They just didn't know how big the lie really was. It was like climbing a mountain, thinking you were reaching the peak, only to discover the summit was an illusion, and the real peak was far higher and more treacherous. The higher you climbed, the more you realized that everything you believed was built on lies. Democracy, freedom, justice. Just words used to cover up a grim reality. Biden knew that most people would check out at this point. Cognitive dissonance would set in, a mental defense mechanism to protect their cherished ideals. But he also knew that for those willing to confront this reality, the story they were about to uncover would be a test of their resolve and their understanding of truth. As he stood to leave, Biden looked at Poroshenko one last time. This is just the beginning, he said. What comes next will be even harder to believe.
So there you go, Lee.
There you go, Jason. What do you think?
Yeah, that's really good. People can get in on the book, go over to patreon.com/Stranahan. It's cool that you've got the AI narrating it. So that's chapter 1, and so much more to be told.
Yeah, and it really does set up a lot of stuff that we expose throughout the book.
Yeah. So we'll see if we can get Andre back next week, but for now, I think we're going to, without him, we'll just leave it here, right?
Yeah, I'll be doing a lot more of the marathon tonight on my X channel, so people can check that out. And by the way, again, you can download the book free on my Patreon. You just have to be a free member. You can download it.
So people should get onto X and follow Lee at Stranahan, and you can also sponsor him on patreon.com/Stranahan. Lee, good to see you. Stay well.
Good to see you. Do you have any questions on the first chapter, by the way?
No, I mean, I know most of that part of the story, you know, and you and I have spoken about Uncle Louis and Banderas and Prologue and all that. People can still get those episodes, you know, go back into the archives and everything. So, you know, should be more to talk about soon, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, great. Well, listen, Lee, take it easy. Thanks to everybody who's sponsoring Lee and sponsoring Crowdsource the Truth. And we will see how Andre's doing and speak to everybody soon. Thanks for tuning in.